Hi teachers, in this video we're going to take a look at how to create an assessment using Google Forms directly from Google Classroom. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to open up the Google Classroom where you're going to be assigning your quiz or your test. Next, we're going to go to the Classwork tab and we're going to click on the Create button. Now in the Create button, there's an option that's called Quiz Assignment. We're going to click on that and you'll notice that on the quiz assignment, there is a Google form that's created and attached to the assignment. So I'm going to go ahead and label this. I'll just call it sample quiz. And you can put any instructions that you want for the quiz right here, but you can also put instructions for the quiz on the Google form. So we will be editing this in just a minute, but I do want to mention a couple things. First is this grade importing option. We want to make sure that that's on, and the reason for it is because once Google Forms has graded our quiz, or graded as much as possible, we're able to then import the grades from Forms directly into our classroom. And then what we can do from there is we can actually import our grades from Classroom into real time. So I can explain how to do that in a separate video, but if that's something that you want to do, then leaving on the grade importing would be a good option. If you'd rather manually import your grades into real time, then it's not necessary to have that on. The other option that I want to mention is this locked mode on Chromebooks. What this is going to do is it's going to make sure that students taking this quiz cannot open any other tab while they're taking the quiz. This only works on Chromebooks though, so it's really just going to work if you have a class only with freshmen, since they're the only students that have Chromebooks right now. So let's go ahead and actually make this quiz and I'll show you a few things. So to edit the quiz that's going to be attached to this quiz, we just need to click on the title. When you click on the title of the quiz, you'll open it up in Forms, and this is where we'll edit the entire form. So I'm going to go ahead and create a quiz, and then we'll take a look at some of the features. Okay, so here we have a quiz that I just created. Now, one thing I do want to mention is even though we have a title here that says sample quiz, we do have to manually change that in our Google form as well. So in the title of the form, in both of these spots right here. Now for the description, this is where you can put some instructions, so we can say answer each question carefully. You will not be able to change your answers once submitted. All right, so we're in the editing mode right now. This is not what the students will see. What the students will see looks like this. So they'll get a clean version where it's just the question and then a space for them to put their answer. So you'll see we have some different types of questions. So let's go through that just very quickly. So the first question that I have here, this is considered a short answer question. So this is just perhaps a word or just a small phrase that students will need to type in for their answer. Now, I do want to mention one thing, and that is the answer key. This is a quiz, so we can have Google Forms actually grade this for us, although it's always a good idea to manually check it as well. But it does speed things up when Google Forms helps us grade things. So let's go ahead and click on the answer key button. And here we have two options. One is the point value. So let's just say we want to make this question worth 2 points. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in any answer that would be considered correct. So we can do something like this, but we can also account for the fact that some students may not use all, proper uppercase letters, so we might have to do things in lowercase. Google form will only mark something correct if it is identical to what our answer key says. So to help speed up the process of grading, you may want to put some variations of the correct answer. And then if students put anything else, you will have to check that manually. But again, hopefully this will speed up the process a little bit. So here it says mark all other answers incorrect. You can turn that on if you would like to. If there's only one way to write your answer, then you can do that. However, if there's multiple ways, then I would just leave that off. So we can click done and we can move on to the next question. So this question has a long answer text. That's because it is a paragraph. We've provided basically a space where students can write a paragraph. Now for the answer key, since this one's a little bit longer, let's say maybe we'll make it 4 points or 5 points, whatever you want to do. And there's not really an answer key for this one because you'll have to manually check to see what students have written. So we're going to click on done. Now here we have an example of a multiple choice question. So what I did here, because this is specific to math and perhaps science or even some other subjects where it's not easy to type the type of question or the answer choices. So this is actually an image. I screenshotted this question, and what you can do is you can click on this little picture icon that shows up, and that's how you can add a picture. So you can use one of your own pictures. You can even just put a URL. You can also search for different images. So there's lots of options for images. You can see that in the image I also have my answer choices A, B, C, and D. So all I had to do for my actual multiple choice is just put A, B, C, D, because I don't want to type in all of these terms with all of those exponents. So let's go to the answer key. Again, we want to select how many points, so let's just say we want to make this one 3 points. Then I want to choose which one is the correct answer, and in this case it is letter D. All right, so we're going to click done. And then let's take a look at this next one. So here we have a question, select all the animals that are considered reptiles. Obviously not a high school level question, but we want to take a look at this option, which is check boxes. So in multiple choice, there's only one answer that can be marked correct. But in check boxes, you can mark multiple answers correct. So if I go to my answer key, then I can mark all of the ones that are considered correct. Let's say we want to make this one 3 points and we're done. All right, so what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and go back to Google Classroom. We're not even going to change anything within responses or even the settings. If you actually open the settings, you'll see that a lot of the options that we need are not selected. But if we go to Classroom and we assign this, you'll see that those settings automatically change to what we would want them to be if we were assigning this as a quiz, which we would. So now if we go back, let me just show you how you can go back to that quiz right from Google Classroom. We can just click on the link, and what we're going to see is the student version because the students have the same link. But because you are the creator of that Google Form quiz, you can click on this edit button and you will be taken back to the editing version of this quiz. All right, so now if we click on the settings, which is this little gear icon, you'll see that everything that we want for this quiz has already been selected for us. So this is really, really important. We do want to make sure that we are collecting email addresses because then we know which grades belong to which students. Without that, you will have to ask your students to write their name on the quiz. There's no other way to know who submitted something. It would be anonymous basically unless they included their name. So we always want to make sure that collect email addresses is turned on. The other thing that we want to make sure is checked, which this will automatically check for you, is that we want to restrict the users to Eastern Christian School Association. That means that students just need to be signed into their school account for them to be able to access and take this quiz. I would also make sure, and again, this is going to be selected for you, but make sure that you limit your quiz to one response, or else students will be able to take your quiz over and over again. One thing down here that's worth mentioning, you probably don't want to have edit after submit turned on, or else students will be able to change their answers. So leave that off, and once a student submits, then that's it. They're not able to access it anymore, submit any more versions of the quiz or anything like that. If we go to presentation, a couple things that could be helpful. If you're a little bit more familiar with Google Forms, then you know that you're actually able to have multiple pages. And so if that is the case, you can help the students kind of pace themselves by showing them their progress. So you can turn this on and there'll be a line that gets colored in more and more as they work through the quiz. Another thing that could be helpful for you is to shuffle the order of the questions. If you don't want students working on the same questions all at the same time, then you can do that, and Google Forms will automatically shuffle the questions. It will not shuffle the answer choices, only the order of the questions. And lastly, if we go to quizzes, again, Google Classroom is going to automatically select this for you, but you want to make sure that Make This a Quiz is turned on. And what that will do is it will allow students to see the point values for each question, and then it will also help with the grading of the questions that are easy to grade. So for example, multiple choice questions or some short answer questions. Again, there are some that you'll have to manually check, and in the end, it's always a good idea to check over everything, make sure that there haven't been any errors made in grading. So another thing that is important is whether you want to release the students' grades immediately after they submit it or later after you manually review everything. Having students see their grade immediately after submission may be a little bit misleading if there are questions that you manually have to check. It will mark things incorrect until you have marked it correct. So let's say there's a quiz and it's 5 questions and 3 of those are ones that you manually have to check. A student's going to think, if they got the other questions correct, that they only scored a 2 out of 5 because you have not manually checked those 3 questions where they had to write a paragraph or whatever it might be. So it could be a little bit misleading for students. So for that reason, I would just release the grades later after manual review. But it's completely up to you. If you have a quiz that's all multiple choice and Google Forms can just automatically grade that for you, then you could just release the grades immediately after submission. So a lot of options. You just have to think what works best in your case. So we're going to go ahead and I'm just going to take this quiz and then I'll show you the back end for you to see what it looks like once students have taken the quiz. All right, so I just took the quiz as a student, and you can see that we have a change here on the back end of our quiz, and that is under responses, we can see that we have 1 submission. A couple of ways that you can grade this. So you can grade everyone's quiz. Let's say you have 20 students in your class. You can grade 20 of the same questions. So for example, there is this question where it says compare and contrast baseball and cricket, and those are ones that you manually have to check because each student will be submitting their own answer. And so it might be very quick for you to just look at that same question, all the answers, and give points based on the student's answers that way, rather than looking at different questions for every single student one at a time. So if we take a look at this question, looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the green check, and what that will do is it will automatically give me the maximum number of points. If it's completely wrong and we want to give students 0 points, then we would press the X, but you also have the option to assign whatever partial credit you'd like. So you could give 3 points, 3.5 even, so you have that option as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just mark it with the green, and you can even add feedback. You can type any text that you want. You can also include a link or a video. So there are lots of options for feedback as well. Now, one thing that you do want to do, which we're not used to doing when it comes to Google Apps, is you actually do have to save. So once you've graded something, make sure you save your progress. And you can see it says edits saved, and we're good to move on. The other way that you can grade is individually. So let's say you only want to take a look at 1 student's quiz at a time. So we can take a look, and this is the test student that I took the quiz under. And so we can see the question here was which president was in office for the shortest amount of time. So this was one of the correct answers that we included in our answer key. So you can see it automatically gave 2 out of 2 points. This is the one that I manually just checked, and I awarded 5 out of 5 points. This one had an incorrect answer chosen, and it will tell you what the correct answer is. So that's going to receive 0 out of 3 points, although in math, oftentimes we give partial credit. So if students are actually submitting work that they've done on a sheet of paper, whether that's through a photo or a scan, whatever it might be, you could, of course, award partial credit. But right now, we're getting 0 out of 3 points for that. And then let's take a look at this last one. In this one, there were 4 answers chosen when there's actually only 3 correct. So it'll show you which ones were selected that are correct and which one was selected that's incorrect. So let's just say for this one that we're only going to give 2 points. Again, you'll see this little pop-up on the bottom asks if you want to save. So I do want to save it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my classroom. All right, and here again, I can see that the assignment has been turned in, which I already knew on the back end because I had 1 response. But here I can see who turned it in. And of course, you'll have more students here, and you'll be able to see how many students have turned it in and how many are still working on it. But one thing that I do want to show you here in Google Classroom is that you can actually import your grades from Google Forms. So if you'll notice, the points right here are currently out of 100 points, and my quiz is actually only worth 13 points. And on this student's quiz, they earned 9 out of 13 points. So what will happen is when I choose to import the grades, it says it will overwrite the current grades, and I'm okay with that. So I'm going to click on import. And you can see here, if I hover over, it has now changed the score to 9 out of 13. And it will do the same for all your other students. It will grade out of 13 points since that's what this quiz is worth. All right. So again, what's nice about creating this specifically within Google Classroom is that you have everything accessible to you there. So you no longer have to go to your drive or search for this specific quiz by name or whatever it might be. Simply by assigning it through Classroom, you'll have access to the form, and you can always just click on the edit button, and that will take you directly to all the responses and everything that you need to be able to take a look at what your students have submitted. So these are just some basics. There's definitely more that we can do, and we'll do that in some other videos. But as always, if you have any questions, please let me know, and I'm always very happy to help with any questions that you might have. Thanks.